Shalom friends, welcome to A Small Sanctuary, where we look at Jewish living with beauty, purpose and wisdom. I'm Esther, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur to a lesser degree, but also Sukkot, and glance back at what my journey has been observing these festivals and how you can make the process both more meaningful and more manageable, because the high holidays are a lot. I want to talk to you about what I have done differently to help me get through this intense season, especially as someone who works in the Jewish community and who is taking a leadership role there, as well as someone who is a householder and has a family and wants to make the festivals special for her family and friends and loved ones. What it comes down to is this: planning, 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 and planning. I sketch out about 6 to 4 weeks beforehand what I want to do in the quiet lull of summer. And then I script out what I need to cook, what I need to bake, what I need to order, and I work down my list accordingly and batch bake for the freezer. Once that is done, that relieves a huge amount of pressure off my shoulders, because I know that I will not have to do as much meal prep and can really focus on the spiritual aspects of the festival. What I did last year is I really planned for the first time ever, and it was such a big help. It was the first year in a long time that I could sit down to a beautiful Rosh Hashanah dinner myself with my family and my friends. In terms of the framework that I used, is I wanted to make Rosh Hashanah more accessible to my kids. Now, this is not very easy because it's a pretty mature festival in terms of its themes of God's sovereignty and life and death and judgment and all that stuff that even adults have a hard time struggling with. I decided to focus on 2 key liturgical themes in the Mahzor: A, Hayam Harat Olam, today is the birthday of the world, and B, Melech al Kol Haaretz. This is the time where we crown God sovereign, not just over us, the Jewish people, but over the entire world. So I played with those 2 themes, and what I decided to do was make my usual honey cake recipe, but I turned it into a birthday cake. I got some icing on it, and I put sprinkles on the icing, and I put birthday candles on it, which we lit before our Yom Tov candles. And that was a really fun feature because we are celebrating the world's birthdays. And of course, you can take this birthday theme as far as you want. You could even decorate your house for a kind of proverbial planetary birthday party if you have really young kids and get them involved in the fun of that. The second theme that I leaned into was this idea of God's sovereignty, which, truth to be told, for someone like me who comes from a country that has a constitutional monarchy, is a little easier to digest than for Americans. But bear with me for a while. What I decided to do is I invited my kids to craft crowns. I gave them glittery gold paper and I asked them to craft crowns which they were allowed to wear themselves at the dinner table, so that makes for a fun memory. They also got to crown the round challot, and that made a really striking visual image. That was another way to have conversations about what does it mean to set God as a sovereign over our hearts? What does it mean for us to default to a position of humility and keeping the greater perspective in mind? Another thing I did as my frame and as my aesthetic is set a theme in terms of the decor and the aesthetics. Now, I just want to be really clear. This does not need to be something that is super expensive. You do not need to invest in tons of stuff. I am not suggesting that you spend a lot of money. The aesthetic that I've chosen to go with for Rosh Hashanah is regal and festive in tones of white and gold. So I get things like very affordable plastic gold charger plates, and I set my holiday dishes on top of them. I get a table runner in white and gold, and of course my gold paper crowns that I have had the kids make. And of course coppers, bronzes and reds work very well. Apples with honey, pomegranates. I also set out a fruit platter with loads of seasonal fruit and fruit we haven't eaten in a while, so that we can say Shehecheyanu over it. And that is how I keep Rosh Hashanah both manageable and meaningful. You will see in the video footage that I am sharing what it looked like last year. Yom Kippur is actually pretty simple. It's the holiday I prepare for least in terms of the home, because we are in synagogue all day. All I do is to make sure that we have a good break fast. Of course, there's the preparation of the soul and to some degree of the body. I also try to immerse in a mikveh, or natural body of water, prior to the holy day. And I prepare for my fast by hydrating plenty in the days leading up to Yom Kippur, and actually counterintuitively perhaps, but eating pretty lightly. You don't want to overfill yourself and tax your body. You really want to eat light, not too salty. Now, Sukkot. Sukkot is of course a wonderful festival, but I've not always been sold on Sukkot. When I lived in Northern Europe, Sukkot was miserable. It was wet and rainy and cold, and I lived in tiny apartments without any outdoor space, and at best I would have a little tiny little balcony where I would tape together some sticks and tarp or trash bags. I'm serious. However, here in the Midwest, I really have come to appreciate and enjoy the glory and splendor of the fall season and of Sukkot. The weather here too can be a little hit or miss, but usually we get at least a few nice, fair, comparatively warm days. The framework that I work with Sukkot is all about back to basics, back to nature. There is a little bit of prep involved at the front end of the festival, but once the festival kicks in, it is actually pretty minimal, and I like it that way because a lot of us are tired after the high holidays, and it is good to be able to decompress. It is the Zman Simchatenu, and it is exactly designed to do that. The front end prep, of course, is setting up the sukkah. In terms of preparation, my main tip is to use water resistant decor that you can reuse year after year after year. So what I do is I invest in pieces that will dry out easily, that will not be damaged, and I pack them up in a big container box at the end of the season. And this actually allows me to reuse the material year after year after year after year, and I've built a nice collection. Another top tip is if you want your children to decorate the sukkah, you can of course laminate their pictures, but that's a bit complicated. You need a laminating machine. But more usefully perhaps is get a clear plastic table cover and slip the pictures underneath. Now, how about the experience of Sukkot? I love Sukkot, and I had a wonderful Sukkot the last few years. Overall, those themes of tilling the earth and gardening and rest and joy and vulnerability and being in tune with nature and redemption are just very, very, very special to me. We have to remember that according to the calendar cycle, Sukkot is the utopia that we get to build after we have been forgiven for Yom Kippur. It is the culmination and the fulfillment of our prayers and our fantasies and longings for redemption built into our actual world. It is a time where we find release and relaxation and purity of heart and alignment with our physical universe and with God. I invite you to watch the clips that I'm sharing in the video, and I'll talk you through what I've done with my sukkah. I'll talk you through what I've done with my Rosh Hashanah table, and I wish you L'Shana Tova Umetuka, a good and sweet new year, and Chag Sameach. I started off the festival season by making my first ever wreath, which I will get to enjoy year after year. I loved setting my Rosh haShanah table last year. As you can see, there are the crowns made out of glittery paper adorning the challahs that are covered. There is a fruit platter, and there is the birthday cake for the world. The fruit platter features fruits that we ordinarily don't really eat all that often, so that we can say Shehecheyanu over them. And here a quick glimpse at my honey dish. As we look across the table, you can see that I've intertwined the gold and the white with a touch of blue for classic effect. But most of all, it is those warm tones that reign supreme. Here is a close-up of the fruit, the apples, the pomegranate seeds, and just a glimpse at the end of Yom Kippur. Sukkot. I love davening in the sukkah with my lulav and etrog and a nice hot cup of tea. And as you can see, there is that tablecloth. Please come into my sukkah. Look at those waterproof, reusable decorations. The crocheted garland made by a dear friend with fall leaves. The tablecloth that keeps everything dry. The contents of a Days United craft box. The colorful Christmas lights. Get them after Christmas, on sale, best thing ever. And a lot of color and festivity with fake flowers in fall colors, votive lights, garlands, and much more. It was a very bright and happy Sukkot. A cluster of grapes to tie us to Eretz Yisrael, to the land of Israel, and of course the inevitable paper garlands, which I'm not a fan of because they do get wet, but they were part of the Days United craft box. I just love the abundance and the color of these decorations, and they are super easy to pack away and reuse again next year. We love hosting and entertaining in our sukkah, and when I can, I will sleep in it for at least one night with my kids, if and when the weather permits, and that is a very special Sukkot treat. Again, here are some plastic fruits. You can just pack them up and use them again. Some challahs with those beautiful warm tones and the sunlight streaming in. Now at night, that is when the party really gets started. Look at all those colors. I like to joke to my kids, as someone who grew up celebrating Christmas, that being inside a sukkah is like living inside a Christmas tree. So much better than an actual Christmas tree. You get to be inside it. You can see the flickering lights and the real sense of depth and dimension this has. And it is just so lovely having our dinners in here, even if we have to pop on a coat and a scarf to keep warm. There is a disco quality to this sukkah that I secretly kind of appreciate. It is, of course, possible to redesign your sukkah year after year and choose a different theme, but I prefer to keep it simple. Here is our dinner. How pretty, with the glowing lights and the food all ready to go. And hearty soups are a great sukkah food. I cannot talk about Sukkot without talking about beautiful fall. Look at those colors. It really is the Zman Simchatenu, the season of our joy. I hope you enjoyed this retrospective and that it inspires you for this year. Thank you for joining me today.